Are you all refreshed? Ready to get back to work and talk? We'd really like to remind you that if you think back to the diagram we showed early on, navigation systems were essential. Once you get beyond EWS 2.0, how are you going to get students where you need them to go? And that is basically our concept of navigation systems. Beginning, say, 5th grade, there are people who want to do this work. You're exposing students to what is college all about. What is a career? Because they frequently don't know. It's a word that they bounce around and that they hear all around them. But what does it really mean? And so we began our concept of navigation systems with the idea of exposing students to what's out there. And this goes back, I think somebody was talking about getting students to complete a difficult core. Well, if you're motivated, you can do a lot better than if you're not motivated. If you know where you're going, or you think you know where you're going, it's a great deal more helpful than if you're just going around. And so we have then progressed on through middle school. And middle school, I know it's a big challenge for many, many folks. Many students seem to get lost in middle school. And then on into 9th grade and through high school. What have we learned about what is needed to help get kids on that path? It's the adult support, basically. And as we talk about the navigation system, that's what we're talking about, is that system of support that may be far more intense than we previously thought. We have a lot to learn about that. And so I'd also like to call up Richard Harrison, Jenny Nereoka, and Richard, is Remy going to speak? Okay. Okay. So Remy Washington won't be with you. She had a phone call that she had to take. So I'm going to ask Jenny to give us the research background a little bit, and what, from the data that they amassed in Chicago, working with Chicago public schools and other places around the country. Every now and then I'm surprised when I'm out and about and somebody says, oh, like in Dallas, oh, Chicago was here a few years ago, or this or that or the other, and they have gotten some of their very basic ideas from Chicago. So Jenny, do you want to talk a little bit about how data leads to navigation systems and what kind of navigation systems those might be?
Sure, I'm happy to. So I've been doing this work at the Consortium on School Research. We have a partnership with the Chicago Public Schools. And so I've been planning to do this work for, probably about 15 years now. So it's been a long time. This actually goes back to, I was talking about this a little bit at my table, to when Ari Duncan was the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. And so obviously a long time ago, because we were a whole new president, we had the Obama years, and Arnie Duncan was CEO before that. So it's been a while. And one of the but under the Duncan administration was really when this focus on college began in Chicago, where before there really was a focus on, high school graduation was the end goal, but there was this shift to saying that the purpose of high school is not just to get kids to go on to get to high school graduation, but that there really was an important role for schools to be playing in helping students figure out what they were going to be doing next. And we've really seen some remarkable changes in terms of the numbers of students moving to Chicago. So I wrote these down, so I'll go through them. So over the past 10 years, we've seen the high school graduation rate go from 57% to 74%, and it was in the low 50s before that. So there's been this big change where there's kind of like a 50-50 chance of students graduating from high school to where it's about 3/4 of students graduate from high school. And this is happening at the same time that we're seeing dramatic improvements in college enrollment. So our four-year college enrollment rates over the same time period went from 33% to 42%, and our overall college enrollment rates went from about a little over half to about 2/3 of students making an immediate transition to college. So it's really now the predominant norm for students to be making, I'm talking about an immediate transition to college, which means that fall after high school graduation, and those numbers go up by another 10 percentage points if you take it out another year. So it's real, this message is really permeated across the district. And we're also seeing the four-year college graduation rate also tick up a little bit. It's gone from 46% to 50% over this time period. And so this idea that we either have to work on high school graduation or college enrollment or college graduation is simply not true. I mean, Chicago's a big place, it's a complicated place. We have any number of difficulties. I mentioned Carney Duncan sort of set this as the goal. Since then, I think we've had 9 different CEOs. And so these changes have lasted through different administration changes. These are things that, it's not about, leadership clearly matters to set the tone and to support this, but these changes are really things that are happening in the schools. This begins with the work that teachers and counselors and principals are really doing to support students to make sure they graduate from high school and that they go on to college. Because it's really, I always like to say these numbers because they really kind of excite me. So we've actually doubled the number of students going on to college. So each year, we're seeing 9,500 students go on to college. That's double what it was 10 years ago. And we're also seeing 1,000 more four-year college graduates every single year, and those numbers should go up if they continue, if that kind of current trends continue with college enrollment and college graduation rates. This is like a tremendous change that is possible even in a large district like Chicago. And so of course the question is like, how did this happen, right? So there's a lot of reasons, and of course I put a lot of it down to district leadership and setting the tone and making this a priority, but it was also something that principals took on, and something that counselors took on. For a long time, the role of a counselor in high school was pretty nebulous. It was like, they were called on, principals didn't know what to do with them. They were called on to do lunchroom duty, or if you needed to come to a classroom. It was just, that was sort of what they were doing. But as this college became a priority, it really became a much bigger part of their role. This was also a struggle for the counselors as well, because they often saw themselves as they played this critical role in a place like Chicago, where they're serving the students with the highest needs, really making sure that they got through difficult times in their lives or communities or all these different things that are happening to our students. And then suddenly there's this goal like college, right? Which is kind of like, well, that seems like a luxury when there's been a shooting, down the street from you or your friend or something like that. And these are counselors who are trying to balance these two things at the same time. But there really was this culture shift. And I think a big part of this actually is kind of, sounds odd, but data, which is sort of our theme for today. One of the big things that also happened here as college became a priority was coming from research out of Chicago that actually I was a part of. We were looking at FAFSA completion, and we realized that one of the big barriers for students going on to college who said they wanted to go to college, who had applied to college and who had been accepted, was the fact that they hadn't completed FAFSA, which is kind of a no-brainer. But on the other hand, if you're an 18-year-old trying to go through this process, and your parents and your family didn't go to college, this is not something that is obvious that you have to go on this for. And so through data, Greg Dartier, who is the director of college and career at the time, worked with the department and the Illinois Student Aid Commission to develop this FAFSA tracking system. And so there was this way for, on a weekly basis, to update where every single senior's name was there, and the counselors or whoever was working with them could see who had completed their FAFSA and who hadn't, if they were held eligible, and a few other key indicators. And so this was really a way to sort of see who was completing it and who wasn't. And central office also played a really big role because Arnie Duncan was sending out emails to all the principals listing every single school and what their FAFSA completion rate was and what it was the prior week, and noting who had made good progress and who had not. And one thing that was really clear was that, and I know about principals, that they're very competitive people. They do not like their name to be at the bottom of the list. And so it really became this thing where principals were like, oh my God, my school could not be at the bottom of this list. And they would start having these conversations with counselors. You know, and another part of the research that I've done is also demonstrating how it's about a college-going culture. That it's not just about having the counselors take on this entire burden by themselves, but really trying to bring in teachers and helping them also see the role that they play in making this happen. And so there's also a push for principals, you know, maybe not specifically about FAFSA completion, but also to really be saying this is about what our school is trying to accomplish. And the FAFSA completion part is a very tangible way of doing this. So that was something that was going on about 12 years ago or so. One thing that the district is doing now is they are providing Naviance, which is it's a system for tracking college applications, but there's also different college and career components that go back, I forget how far back into the elementary grades, but every single elementary school and every single high school has the Naviance system. And the district has really been pushing this as a way for counselors to be having these conversations with students, not just about FAFSA completion, but about college application, about college choice, college met, all of these parts that go into going on to college. And I won't go too far into this, but the other reason why this Naviance system is so important is that the Chicago Public Schools also have a new graduation requirement, which they're calling Learn, Plan, Succeed, which means in order to graduate, every single student has to provide evidence that they have a plan for what they are doing after they graduate. So they have to have a college acceptance letter, an employment offer letter, they have evidence that they're enlisting in the military, or that they're going to a gap year program, or an apprenticeship, or whatever it is. They need to have evidence that they know what they're going to be doing after they graduate. And I was also talking about this at my table. I was a little bit uneasy with this at first, because I don't like accountability that places the burden on students. They have to do things, especially if they're not prepared for this. But I think that, but as I've talked to people in administration, where they feel like their school staff are, is that they feel that at many high schools, these are the sorts of things that are already happening. I mean, when you have 2/3 of students already enrolling in college, you're 2/3 of the way there. There are also, and that's just students who enroll, not just those that have been accepted, and not including students who are employed or all these other different types of outcomes. So a lot of the progress has already been made. There's been systems of support within schools to kind of be working on these things. Which is not to say that this is not a burden on counselors what they've had to do, but it's not coming all at once, and it's been a slow rollout of this. The other part of it is that Chicago Public Schools like to have use kind of the blunt instruments of graduation requirements to get people to do things, like the Boston Core, whatever it's called. It's something that has been going on in Chicago for I think almost 20 years, where we have graduation requirements and classes that are aligned with college admission standards. You have to take computer science now, and you also have to have 20 hours of service learning in order to graduate. And this has been happening for about 10, 15, right, probably 15 years, where you have to have 20 hours of service learning, and something that also has to be tracked. And it's also like there's no student who has not graduated because they didn't complete their service learning requirement. It's one of the things that people in high schools do. It's like they're almost all the way there, and they will make sure that this happens. And so I'm imagining that this is what's going to happen in high schools now with this other requirement. But I think the most important part of it is really that it's saying it's the job of everyone in the school to make sure that students aren't just sort of talking about college, but they've really applied and they've really been accepted, or that they really do know what they're going to do after they graduate from high school. And it's not just something that is on the student and their families, but schools really need to be making sure that these things are happening. And so they're really pushing hard on this, and I will stop there because I've been talking a lot.
Let me just make one comment, perhaps, which is that I think if you were listening in the same way I was, what you heard is that these things take a long time. And that's, I think, a very valuable lesson for everybody. You don't make change overnight and expect it to stick. You have to keep on working on it, and you keep on adding incrementally to it. Another factor that I heard was the intentionality of all of it. Kids don't know how to get where they need to go, basically, and we're expecting them to make huge numbers of decisions when they're, what, 12, 14, 16, 17 years old. The support that's needed in this case, some came from the district, but which set up the systems that people could use. Others are coming from the schools and having built the culture of expectations for the adults, principals, teachers, counselors. I think that's very exciting what's happened, and the rise in graduation rates is phenomenal. And the college going rate, and for those of you who were here last year, we had Tim Rennick, who's the vice president at Georgia State. He pointed out the economic benefits of having more students stay in school means more money for the state legislature. So there is a payback. And one of the things we've been finding is that for these kinds of things to stick, everybody needs to see a benefit from it. And with that, I'm going to turn to Richard Harrison, who's Chief Academic Officer at Uplift Education in Dallas, Texas. A great charter network. And it's very interesting, it's got 20,000 kids, which is the size of a good-sized school system in many parts of the country. So, Rich.
Thank you. Just for context, Uplift Education is a charter network. We serve 20,000 students, 80% of whom are low income, 98% who are students of color. We serve a lot of first-generation college-going students. And I was at a data conference last year, and there was a statement on a PowerPoint that said, the system is perfectly designed to get the outcomes it gets. And one of the things that we're big on is we want our students to complete college at a 70% clip. That is the equivalent of middle and upper income students nationally in this country. And if we were about equity and college access and completion, we would want our students in underserved communities to hit those marks. So we want to manage to that. And I thought, Bob, you did a great job of laying out GPA, college AP, IB courses, and this notion of if you want to get those outcomes, not only do you have to shift the set of behaviors with the data that you're using, you have to be willing to restructure your work and make systems level changes. And I'll talk a little bit about the systems level changes. One of those definitely came from the University of Chicago Consortium research that my colleague here, Jenny, does, right? In Chicago, there's been a lot of schools that do the International Baccalaureate program. And it's been a big driver of a lot of school success. And one of the studies that came out was that students in CPS who did the full diploma program, whether they passed the test or not, were completing college at like 72%, low-income Chicago public school students. And so we figured, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do International Baccalaureate for all. So K through 12, we're authorized by International Baccalaureate, and it is not an opt-in program. Most schools where we have AP and IB, that's usually reserved for the select X% of the students who are in that track. That's our default track, and you have to opt out if you're not in that track. And so those students who opt out might be some students who have special needs and they're just taking half the offerings, or students who are limited English proficiency, and we might want to encourage them taking the Spanish classes, but we're Canadian, they're not taking the English. But 80+% of the students are in the full diploma program across all of our 10 high schools. We want to do that for a few reasons. When we looked at our historical data, we're on pace, just looking at the last 10 graduating classes at Uplift, we're on pace for half of our students to, we've historically had 50% of our students earning their bachelor's degree after 6 years. So if we want to get to 70, we have to do a few things. We have to increase GPAs. We have to increase our ACT scores. Right now, a third of our kids go to selective colleges and universities. About 50% go to what I would say area regional colleges, and 20% go to community colleges. Our graduation rates from community colleges are not great. We bat about 500 when they go to a regional university like University of Texas Arlington or University of North Texas. Kids who go selective, they're fine. So we need to increase that percentage and better equip the students who are going to the regional four-year colleges and universities. And we thought, you know what, the IB program is the way to do that. And so we definitely put some structures in place, but we also took the time to, again, restructure our staffing around college counselors. We staff college counselors for our juniors and seniors at a 1 to 60 to 70 ratio. And people might say, wow, that's awesome, because in traditional districts, comprehensive schools, it's 1 on more than a few hundred. But again, if you want to value college access, you need to think about those ratios, and you need to probably start with your staffing model there first before you staff anything else. We're in Texas, but we don't do football, so that saves a ton of money as well. You know, two things to think about. One is the data that you're getting changing a set of behaviors or informing the set of behaviors you need to change at the student, teacher, administrative level? And then 3 is if you're not willing to have that data inform of the personnel and structural decisions in your district, you have to ask yourselves why you're looking at the data in the first place. And you have to be willing to staff it programmatic, make dramatic programmatic changes if you want to hit amazing outcomes for kids.
Thank you very much. And they are getting amazing outcomes for kids. And it's quite amazing to sit with this staff, as I did a couple weeks, a month ago, and listen to all the different perspectives and how fast they make decisions when they all get on the same wavelength. They have the same shared values. They come up with a plan and a strategy, and they test it out, right? Last but not least at all, Donna Dixon. Donna was, we had a project in Alabama a couple of years ago, and Kay Warfield at the front was a wonderful State Department liaison who helped us make it work. It was a random controlled trial, 40 schools, 20 in the implementation phases, and 20 control. That's the wrong word for comparison, might be better. Because talk about principals being competitive. In Alabama, they're competitive. And
We do have football.
they in case you did not notice.
And we have 2 schools.
But the interesting thing was in terms of our study, principals would hear what somebody else was doing, the control principals, comparison principals. They'd hear a little bit about what was going on, the focus on first-time 9th graders, and they would think, why not me? I can do better than that. So it was a very interesting study. Donna was our promotion coach for first-time 9th graders in one high school, and I'm going to let Donna take it away from there. Quite different than what we've been talking about. Rural, small. Go ahead.
Well, yes, I had the great opportunity to work as a promotion coach in 3 different schools, actually, in Alabama during the course of this grant. And all 3 schools were very needy schools, but the primary school that I worked with the last 2 years of the grant was a small community school It is in a small college town, and you had a very diverse population. You had university professors, and then you had the poorest of the poor, located in that school. The graduation rate in that school was like 67%, and attendance rate was even lower than that, because prior to working as a promotion coach, I was employed in the school system there in Shelby County, and part of my responsibility was I was an attendance officer for this whole district of 26,000 students. And every year when we did attendance, I was always so sad because my hometown, that one high school had the lowest attendance rates of any of the schools around. So anywhere attendance in that school was in the 80s, like 86%, 84%. They never got above 87%. So one of the things that we had to do was go into the school, start working with the first-time ninth graders, and follow them and help them be successful throughout their time in high school. We have a system in Alabama, as part of our student management system, that we are able to collect data. And in that data, it has been following the student actually since the elementary grades, but primarily we looked at their middle school years and then started looking at them in their ninth grade. We could get a grasp of students that had behavior problems from this data. We could get a grasp of students that had core subject problems and then attendance problems. So we started looking at those to begin with. During the course of the year of working with the students, we were able to follow them, their attendance and behavior and their course credits to see how they were doing every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 6 weeks, however we needed to do that. In order to do that, we went into the school, and first of all, y'all have touched on some of the very same things we had to do with. You walk into a school, and you tell them, oh, I'm here, we have this new program we want to do in your school, and, we're going to help make your school successful. And you see all of the teachers' eyes roll. And they say, oh yeah, okay, here's another program, new program. You'll be here for a few weeks, and then you're gone, and we'll go to another program. Well, I had to sell it to them first. But first of all, you have to work with the principal and get the principal on board. And it took, a few weeks. It took a few months. I attended every faculty meeting. Every faculty meeting, I gave them data that I was able to pull and show them what the students were doing as a whole. And it didn't take long for them to say, you really, we didn't know this. But once we could see the data of what's happening with these students, how many students were being absent, and these were the students in their classroom. So they looked at that and said, okay, they started buying into it. We looked at also while we're there, we created a team called a promotion team, but we tried not to create a new team. We looked at what they already had in place, like their problem-solving teams, their new kind of referral teams. We looked at what they already had in place and pulled that into what we did, and we started meeting with them and working with them. In the whole process of this, we had to look at also changing the culture of that school. As I said, all the schools that we worked with, most of them had graduation rate problems, and most of them had discipline problems, and most of them had attendance problems. So what do you do to change all of that? And once you got the teachers involved and the principal involved at looking at what the data is showing here, we start brainstorming and come up with ideas. And they came up with some wonderful things that they did in that school. And one of the things that I want to be sure I talk about here real soon, but one day, this school particularly, how when you go to college and you have rush sorority, rush. Well, they did rush as a sense for their clubs in their school. And they had a club created that every student in that school could fit into. And so they opened up their gym one day, and they had the president and representatives from each club in that school go, and the students went through rush. And they signed up what club they'd like to be a member of, and they were interviewed by all the students. And then we had this big announcement, this is the club you're in, and we had to make sure every student got involved in a club. It might have been photography, it might have been in golf, or, just anything that they had an interest in, but we went through Rush and had students involved in that. Another thing that we did that I think is just awesome, and you know how you have athletes college signing days, and they always get their picture made, and their athletes are signing with their college, and all these announcements are made. We had a college signing day for every student that went to college. And we had the college representatives there. They all met in the library, and every student got their picture made. There might have been 4 students that went to the University of Alabama, but they got their picture made with their banner and their certificate and the letter of attendance. But we had a college signing day for every student. That, opens eyes of students that, sit back and say, why am I doing all of this? But it really made a difference. But one things that we did that I think was one of the biggest differences in those schools, and in this school particularly I work with, we had report card conferences. I don't know if we'll go into that, but that's okay, report card conferences. But we met at the end of each 9-week grading period. We pulled in community volunteers. And these were people that, most of them, you talk about FERPA, and then you talk about background checks, but these are all people that met those requirements. But anyway, we had pastors, we had bus drivers, we had bank presidents, we had businesses in the local community, local county. Be a part of that, we had large corporation employees, to come in. And every student in the 9th grade met with a mentor in that report card conference. And that student met one-on-one with that mentor, and they sit there and talked about their grades. But before meeting with that mentor, the student had to go through a reflection sheet. And on that reflection sheet, the students had to answer questions of, what grades do I have? Why did I make this grade? What caused me to make this grade? And what do I plan to make a difference and do better next time? At the end of 9 weeks, we followed them through our data collection. We could pull data, real-time data, like every week, and see how a student was doing, or every 2 weeks how a student was doing. Now, in the course of all of this, it also held the responsibility to the teachers to keep their grades up to date. So we had to change it online, changing their teachers grade your papers and get your grades into the computer and keep it up to date. But in the course of that, we went from a 67% graduation rate to an 89% graduation rate. And this school was just ecstatic because, hey, we're finally making progress. But then also, their attendance rate went up to the 90s. They got into 93%. And I was so excited because kids were wanting to come to school because there was a reason to come to school. And all of that stemmed from looking at the data. And one more thing about that report card conference, when the students came back the next 9 weeks, they met with the same mentor. And we found that they developed that relationship with someone that had nothing to do with that school, but yet was interested in them. Because one thing we found that 9th graders, and really is across the board, is that they don't really have anybody at home that sometimes cares what they make. They don't have anybody to put that report card in all age on the refrigerator to say you did a good job. But these mentors were able to do that to them. And I'll never forget this one student, and I've told this story several times. The librarian in the school was working with us through the report card conferences, and she was out in the hallway, and the student had just finished her report card conference, and she was so happy, and the librarian says, well, you knew you had all A's anyway, what's the big deal? And she says, it's nice to be told you did a good job. And that's what those volunteers did. When they met with them, if they had all A's, they were told, we're proud of you, you did a good job. So it all worked with changing that culture, letting those students know someone cared, but the bottom line is looking at the data and being able to keep up with what's going on and looking at that. one thing that I'm really excited about, one of the principals in this school that we work with, he has left that school but gone to another school in another school district. He carried those same plans and ideas to his new school. He's in a very large school now, quite a few students, and they still continue to report card conferences. And I know last year, out of I think 600 students in their graduation class, they only had one student not to graduate. And I think that, that just kind of tells you, developing those relationships and, looking at that data, and they carry through, pulling that data and looking at it daily, makes a difference with them.
Very much. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for any of our panelists. Have they piqued your interest and curiosity?
How do you afford that?
Be stronger than be cry.
Yeah, so what is, yes, we're a charter school, so we're able to set, I almost look at it this way. When you run a school, you have to think about how to staff it all the time. And if you want to prioritize reading and math, you have to staff that accordingly. And when you think about schools, right, if you run like a 8-period day, and if you're spending 1/8 of students' time in math, are you really going to be great at math? So maybe you might want to, if you want to be great at math, you might invest a quarter of your time each day in math. And sometimes, I know some districts are kind of constricted by their staffing, but when it comes to college access, if that is something that is really important, you have to staff it appropriately. And if you're working with students that are first-generation college-going students, to make sure their college lists are tight, making sure that there's not undermatching. One of the things that we do is, Jenny mentioned Naviance. We download the data every week from Naviance into our data store, and we run reports. So even I know which students have undermatched college lists and which students don't. But if we're going to respond to that data really effectively, we need the right ratios to respond to that, because there's no way one counselor can meet the college-going needs of 300+ students. We do think the right ratio is 1:70, especially if you're going to be sitting down with families, if there are unique family situations that make FAFSA completion and income verification more challenging. Those things take time, especially with first-generation students in underserved communities. So that is where we just put a stake in the ground, and that is the first thing we staff, and then we staff everything else.
This is from a retired superintendent, so he knows where he's coming from, where he's going with that question. You are hearing again about the intentionality and making adults make choices about what they're going to do in schools, right? Any other questions? Yes, sir, ma'am.
So you spoke about the academic mentoring or academic advising that was happening during the report card days. At any point was that extended into intervention or tutoring? And if so, how did that happen at the system level?
Yes, it did. When we held the report card conferences, the mentors that were our, community people, they had a little slip of paper that they took the reflection sheet that the student came to them with the reflection sheet, and they had their report card there, and they kind of looked at the whole idea. And we had numerous cases where a student said they're just too shy to ask for help. They didn't feel comfortable going to the teacher. So the mentor would write on here that Donna requested tutoring in math. One case that I know specifically, we had a student, she was making pretty much all A's in every subject but math. And she was failing math. And we found out that she had a tutor, but she was Hispanic, and it was a language barrier there. So she asked if there was a tutor that spoke the same language she did, and of course we went to the math teacher. The math teacher knew a perfect senior student that spoke Spanish. We aligned that person up with this student, and she spoke her language, and her math grade started rising tremendously. We had a student that was not doing well, and we found out from that the parents were getting a divorce, the mom was moving away, and the student was probably going to have to leave the school, and she had been there all her life and didn't want to do that, and she was just depressed and just having a hard time. So they make notes of that. The mentors give me that note. I go to the principal or to the counselor and share this with them. Sometimes with the math tutoring situation, I went directly to the math teacher, or the head of the math department and worked with them. If a student said that I would like to talk with Ms. Dixon about my grade in history, we would have a little sheet that we put in Ms. Dixon's mailbox and say, John Doe would like to talk to you about their math grade. But sometimes the students just did not feel comfortable going to the teacher. And that kind of opened the doors for that. So.
I had a question that just around Christian matching work. So there's a couple of questions around that. I guess, broadly, I'd love to hear about how that process works around engaging your counselors, kind of professional development around developing their knowledge and that. Specifically, when you're thinking about matching students to institutions, how you're, the extent to which you're looking at selectivity of the college versus or including the graduation rates of those institutions and their relationship between the background students.
So I think there's, I want to outline kind of 3 steps that we took. First is just being really clear on what are the data requirements that we have. What do we want to be able to answer? We want to make sure that students are going to the right match, right fit college. We want to make sure that every student has a strong financial aid award and they're going to a college or university that has a great probability of graduating. And what is the data required to be able to answer those questions? So in our kind of our automated dashboards that we have, we pull from assessment files like ACT or SAT, we pull from our SIS so we know their GPAs. In our newest thing, and we've been at this for about a couple of years, we scrape the back end of Naviance to make sure that we have all the variables that we need to first answer those questions. The second piece then goes to how do we ensure that the reporting that we create for me, for our central office team, for high school principals, for their college counseling staff, what do those reports need to look and feel like for them to be able to make the right moves based on the data that they see? Because it's not enough just to give them, hey, this is your report for the week. They have to have very clear things that they need to address. And so we took the time to design individual reports with the understanding of that has to spark change. So if we're going to create a dashboard that filters out students who have high GPAs, high ACTs, and we want to make sure everyone has the right college lists, they're applying to the right number of reach targeted safeties, what does that need to look like? So if there's a kid or two that didn't apply to the right schools, that they see it really clearly on their dashboards and they're able to work with that student the next week. So that's part 2. And I don't think that's enough. Part 3 is there has to be some accountability systems involved. And so, and actually, administrators centrally rolling up their sleeves and doing the work with the high school teams. So quarterly, I'll give you an example. First quarter, my high school teams, leadership teams, got an agenda from me, all 10 high schools, and they were expected to look at the data and be able to explain the state of their senior class college lists. I asked for college essays that of kids written at this ACT and GPA band, one a little higher, and for a top student. And I read those prior to my meeting so that I could get a sense as to how well students are coached on how to write their college essays. I also made sure that we had intervention systems in place for our 9th and 10th graders to making sure that they're increasing in their marks so that by the time we become juniors and seniors, they're applying to more competitive schools. So there's a very prescriptive agenda of my quarterly meetings with each of my 10 high schools that I'll sit down with, and we'll pull up the dashboards together, filter together, identify those students together. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to build the habit change that you want to with the personnel on our high school. So that's kind of the 3-step segment that I took to the change management necessary to not only change the culture, but also just to change the workflows to ensure that every student had really strong college lists. And right now what we're doing is we've compiled our historical financial aid awards. One of the things that we did find is that students were undermatching and choosing going to their target or safety school versus going to their target or reach school. And we found that a good percentage of that was due to financial aid awards that they received. So we created a tool where if a student got into Baylor, we're able to consolidate the average financial aid award from Baylor by EFC with a min and a max, so that counselors were equipped with the data to be able to advocate on behalf of the student, saying, you know what, $2,000 to $3,000 more per year is the difference of this student attending your institution. Can you meet us there? Because historically, looking at the aid awards for the last 3 years, there has been precedent where you've done that. And again, we want to advocate for our students to get into the college of their aspirations. So that's a new beta tool that we've been working with. But I would say that it just, for you to do that, you have to have central office staff on campus rolling up their sleeves, looking at the data alongside the folks on the ground.
I'm wondering if Chattanooga wants to talk about your matching your data system. You can all see it later this afternoon, but it's very similar, I would say, in some ways. Keith, you want to Dan?
Sure. We have not integrated selectivity yet. But we look at estimated post-secondary completion, really work with our college career advisors. As they work with students, we go out on monthly school visits, sit with them, look at the lists, and right now we're still at the beginning parts of that change management that we're pushing. And look at this information, look how many students could be at a higher level of estimated post-secondary completion. We have some state-level policies that automatically funnel kids in kind of an undermatched situation. So we use our dashboard to overcome that a lot. And take that picture of that you're a few dollars away. And for us, it's helped a lot with the I want to stay safe phrase that you hear from students a lot. I want to stay close to home. And a great example we have is we're a very long state. So North Georgia is way closer to Memphis. So if you would find a place in North Georgia where you're going to be equally or more successful and finances work out right, then we're going to help you get there. You're supposed to be closer to home. So that's a great fit for you. And so it's and you'll see on the tool, we have a mapping part of it where you can physically see schools that are close to where you are. And we have a long way to go, but it is a nice interactive tool with the advisors and the students. If we could get more grown-ups on board, that would be great. The advisors and students are quite adept at operating that tool.
Very impressive. Very impressive to see it. And one of the things I liked most was actually just old tech. The wall maps they had showed what was within 4 hours, what was within 8 hours. Very easy tool, not very expensive, to help kids know where they might go. And for those of you who were here last year, you'll remember Jorge Aguilar from Sacramento City did something very similar. Sac City couldn't be here this year, but they had taken data from the university system and from the school and looked at it for the same thing. Were kids undermatching, overmatching? They also found undermatching. And they again took a very simple approach, which was to make up packets for kids. It said, you are eligible for the following 5 institutions. And you can make it. Other kids with your characteristics have already done it. And began to set expectations, but also possibilities for people. So let's move on to our next part. Oh, sorry, David.
I just wanted to follow up on that. I was a part of that project with Jorge in Fresno and in Sac City. We really started to work to put a lot of that together core-wide across all of our network, including some student reports that we're designing right now in the design process that actually will utilize some of the college matching. In California, we get data from the universities about the profiles of kids that get accepted into universities. I don't know if that's national, but we use that data to help with the matching process and then put it into the hands of, well, moving from putting it into the hands of kids. So I think there's some exciting stuff there around a wide variety of options for kids who want to make that available.
Just a second, Paul. I was just going to comment, for those of you who don't know, CORE is an amalgamation of 6 to 8 of California's largest districts. And together they serve 7 million kids. So this is at scale. It's something important to remember. That's a larger population than many states have statewide, by substantial amounts. Paul?
Yes, that was my suggestion was, why would we talk about all these dashboards and what's going to be on it and how they use it? But dashboards at the kid level, to me, would be a really important way of them being able to look at where they are, or how they're progressing, what they need to do. But then an interface, and I think it was, I can't remember, the Georgia Tech people or the people from Memphis or someplace that they were looking at, creating apps so that they were trying to keep kids from the summer melt. So they were able to do 24/7, what's a FAFSA, what's a income statement, blah, blah, blah. So if you could do that with all these data that we're talking about, then to me you are getting power where power needs to be, but the assistance in
Right. That's very much in a sense what promotion coaches in Alabama did again, look at what, not constant, not formal dashboards, but it's getting feedback to kids.
Well, that's the whole focus of assessment for years. Why do assessment if kids don't know what the hell it is? Or how to use it?
So you can shake a stick and say you're doing that. Why don't we move on to some table work before lunchtime? Think about some questions. First of all, any questions that arisen for you during this conversation, just at your table. But also, what is David currently doing about what you're taking? What undertaking? What are you doing already in response to this data? When we think about teaching these concepts to other people who aren't doing it yet, which is what we'll move into, we've been talking about networks, and we are a network now, but we need to expand it, right? That goes back to what Bob said in the beginning. How do you teach it? What do you recommend to other people? What are the challenges you've been having that you'd like to overcome, that you think are there? And last, what are you learning? Where do you want to go? What have you learned? What are the challenges going backwards? What are your steps? How are you using data? And then we'll have a brief report out before lunch and see what, if you're all thinking in the same way, or if some of you got one idea and some of got another,